We are Okay, so I'm no Vin Diesel, but guys, we are going to talk Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and no spoilers. This is going to be my spoiler-free review. Maybe I'll come back and do a spoiler-specific review. I'm definitely going to come back to this movie at some point for some video essays because there's a lot to unpack here. But if you're afraid of spoilers, like if you're terrified of them, maybe get out anyway, because I am going to talk about the film, but I'm not going to directly spoil anything here, so feel free to stick around, get my impressions of the movie, and whether or not I think you should go see it. Okay, there is one spoiler. You should go see it, 100%. But if you want to hear why and what to expect, stick around. Is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 a perfect movie? No, I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect movie outside of maybe the original Jurassic Park. That's pretty close to perfect. But it's certainly, I think, one of the strongest endings to a trilogy ever, and you know, a lot of the trailers leading up to this were calling it the best MCU film since Endgame, and I think they're right. As much as I personally enjoyed Quantumania, I think this movie definitely is superior. James Gunn has this uncanny ability to channel an incredible amount of heart and character development into a story that is jam-packed with characters in an ensemble cast, and jam-packed with horror and humor as well, and he balances it all, not perfectly, but certainly better than the vast majority of filmmakers I think could possibly do that. I think this is James Gunn's unique skill set, the ability to balance those things. He's not going too hard in the humor like Taika Waititi, and he's not going overly dark necessarily, though this movie definitely taps into James Gunn's horror sensibilities that he has been known for in the past. Like, he really got to play with the horror angle, and yet the movie still is lighthearted.
Knock it off!
What? Now, I will say up front, if you are somebody who would be triggered by animal cruelty, like you're gonna be affected by that negatively, I'd still encourage you to watch the movie because it has some really great themes around that, but just be prepared that the film's villain, who, by the way, is an outstanding MCU villain, pretty darn cruel to the animals that he gets involved with in the film. Gets involved with, that's a weird way to say it. Anywho, I'm getting off track. One of the big things that I found really impressive about Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was the fact that James Gunn is able to sideline a character for 2/3 of the movie, and yet not actually sideline that character and really, in fact, make the story primarily that character's story. It's rather ingenious. It's not like he reinvented the wheel for this. He's using techniques that have always existed, flashbacks and, you know, the sort of quasi-dream sequences that somebody who is unconscious or dying or anything like that might experience in a movie. But he does it in such a way that he's able to take this character out pretty close to the start of the movie, and yet they're never actually out of it, and they get an amazing resolution to their character arc by the end of it. A lot of you have probably guessed who I'm talking about by this point in the film, just from the trailers alone, but I promise no spoilers, so I'm not gonna say the name of the character who gets not sidelined. But it was just very impressive to me. Really enjoyed that, and it just, again, showcases James Gunn's ability to tell a story. Spinning off from that, another really impressive thing to me about this film, and one I think the things that makes it just really strong as a narrative in general, is again James Gunn's ability to inject heart and balance characters and give them good character arcs, like give them an arc to carry on from the previous movies in some cases, or start at the beginning of this movie, or pick up on the beginning of this movie and resolve by the end. There are about a dozen characters, not a dozen, about 10 characters who are Guardians of the Galaxy. Some of them are the ones that we really think of, and then there's others like Kraglin and Cosmo who are like side characters, but all of them, every single one, with the exception of maybe Groot, gets some degree of a character arc and a resolution. They have some emotional growth. Now, for some characters like Cosmo, it is kind of a joke, but it also I mean, it's there. And then for other characters like Kraglin, it's in the background, but it's also very recognizable and very appropriate, and again, carries on from the previous movie. And then for some characters like Peter Quill and Rocket, and even Nebula, oh, and definitely Drax too, don't want to forget Drax's, it's very emotional and very personal, and very, very strong growth for those characters. Mantis too, actually. Again, basically all of them. He does an outstanding job. I personally can't think of a time I've seen an ensemble cast, especially such a weird ensemble cast, balanced so perfectly, and for which you can get so emotionally invested in an action movie, in a superhero movie especially. It's just incredible. So I think really that's what makes this movie exceptional, but there's still so much more to cover on things that are great about this film. On the other side of that, the opposite side of that, and I've already alluded to this, is the film's villain. The MCU has been known for having rather weak villains. Not physically weak, obviously, a lot of them are super, super powerful, but just emotionally and narratively weak. They don't have very strong motivations, or the motivations are just cliche, or they're just a mirror opposite of the other character, like they have the same powers as the person they are the foil to, and it just feels kind of cookie cutter. That's always been the complaint, you know, with the exception of villains like Loki and Thanos. That's what most people complain about. But the High Evolutionary, I think, may be the best villain put to screen in an MCU film. Not because he's exceptionally complicated. I think Thanos might beat him out in the just emotional, at least Infinity War Thanos, may beat him out in the like emotional character side of it. But he still has that. He has an intrinsic motivation that, while it looks on the surface like it is generic bad guy stuff, is very much not generic bad guy stuff. But even more than that, he's played perfectly in the film. Like, the acting is superb, and his menace is just undeniable. It's not because of his powers, and it's not even because of his intellectual capacity, both of which are his like defining traits in terms of why the characters would have a problem going up against him. But his cruelty that comes from such a deep place inside of him makes him just extraordinary to watch on screen. And he has a very personal vendetta against one of our characters in this film. You can probably guess who, but again, I'm not gonna directly spoil it for you. Now, I mentioned also that James Gunn gets to play with his horror roots, like those get to come back out into this film, and I want to double down on that for a second. This film can get downright gross at certain parts. Now, it's CGI gross, so, you know, if you've got a weak stomach type of gross, but it's like, objectively, thinking about it, watching it, there's some pretty gnarly stuff in here. I mean, the High Evolutionary's whole thing is mixing genetics and cybernetics and all of that jazz, so we end up with some characters who are just, he would call them abominations, and visually they are. You've seen the trailer where that really weird thing that I think was voiced by James Gunn is coming out of the cage, but, you know, some of his henchmen not only are horrific and delightful to watch on screen, even knowing that they're just kind of CGI monsters, but I got some Ninja Turtle vibes out of this movie. Very random, weird thing, but there are two distinct things about this movie that gave me very Ninja Turtle vibes. One of them is entirely on the nose, because it is, I don't think this counts as a spoiler, it's literally a turtle. And then the other is two of these henchmen of the High Evolutionary that I immediately got Bebop and Rocksteady vibes off of these two characters. That's all I'm going to say about them. You'll see it when you get to that part of the movie. If you've already seen the movie and you're watching this review, comment down below and let me know if you got the same vibes from those two characters. You'll know who they are when you see them. You get to see these delightful horror spectacles. You know, he's got some of these shadowed silhouette shots. It's really great that he gets to touch on that, and again, balance it with heart and humor. Like, even when you're dealing with some of these really horrific sights, you're really focused on the emotional depth that goes behind them. Really enjoyed that part. I will say it does lead to one of my first cons in the film, and I think maybe I've really praised this film a lot now, so let's kind of shift into the cons. And one of those is that there is the cliche, like, bad guy sends his faceless army for the heroes to mow down moment in the film. I do think it's executed better than a lot of those other instances are in the MCU. It's not there just for the sake of having an army versus an army, or in this case, an army versus a small squad of heroes. It serves a narrative purpose. I don't think you could have gotten away with really not doing it easily. I'm sure there is a way to write it where that didn't have to happen, but I do think it was not the easiest, but an easy way to accomplish that and give us an action set piece. Little cliche, I do think it's my least favorite action set piece because of the same reasons that people complain about them in the first place. There's not really as much emotional stakes when you're mowing down faceless drones, but it's there. It's a small con. Double-sided coin here. One of my other favorite things about the film is Adam Warlock. Will Poulter is great, and Adam Warlock is really fun to watch on screen. I think they nailed the visuals of him, and his character, I think, the best thing about his character in this movie is that he's kind of an individual microcosm of the themes and struggles present in the movie. He is basically like every other Guardian, but having their backstory presented as a current story for a newly introduced character who is hunting them down in the film. Like, he's confused, he's kind of stupid like Drax, he's got family issues, like he needs friends and family and guidance so badly, and ultimately he's looking for a second chance, and he's got these violent impulses that he's really just kind of this fun little microcosm character that I really might want to sit down and do a video essay on at some point in the future. But the flip side of that, there is a big con to Adam Warlock, in my opinion. Two cons. One, very specifically, if you are like a hardcore OG comics Warlock fan, you may not like this interpretation because, like I said, he is kind of, they lean hard into like Born Yesterday type of approach to him. So he's kind of dumb, he's kind of silly, and he doesn't have that like serious messianic feel that the comics Adam Warlock has. So if that's the Adam Warlock you want, that's not the Adam Warlock you're gonna get. I do think the version we got works, but that could be a con to some people. The other con that I think is just a con in general is that he is criminally underused. And I get it. I can see, I mean, it was a 2.5 hour film. If they put more scenes of him in there, it could easily have hit 3 hours and felt too crowded. So I get it, but he's such a good character, and we only get to see him spottily throughout the film. I think we could have seen a lot more of him. It does still feel a little bad to not get more Adam Warlock by the end of the film. And then there's the ending. This is another one that's double-sided for me. And not just because it is an ending and we're not getting any more of this team of the Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, James Gunn has gone on set, he's not going to do another one, and this team isn't coming back. I don't feel like that counts as a spoiler because it's been outright stated before. But to me, my problem with the ending is the pacing of it just feels a little odd. Maybe that's just me, but it felt like some resolutions were being dragged out a little more than they should, and some were getting a little bit more tension. That's probably a nitpick. The flip side of that is the ending, again, character arcs, really good otherwise. As far as just like a narrative ending to it, an emotional ending to it, everybody gets to move on in a way that I think is appropriate for them. Really strong ending. Again, a really strong ending to a trilogy. And we could talk post-credit scenes, but I might save that for another video. I think this review has probably gone on long enough. Thank you guys so much for watching up to this point. If you're new here, my name's Jonathan. This is Story Arc. I appreciate you being here. Go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. And guys, I want to hear your thoughts. If you've seen the movie, or you've seen enough trailers to feel like you've seen the movie, I want to hear your thoughts about this final installment of the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comments down below. If you have any questions about the movie, any themes, anything that you want to make me a future want me to make a future video on, also let me know down in the comments below. Again, thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more film reviews or video essays, I'm going to pop a playlist over here. And if you want to see what I'm doing with my next short film, click on over here. As of recording, I've got a crowdfunding campaign going for that. You can jump in on it and help me make my next film if you are so inclined. Anywho, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Cut.